It's all about consciousness. It's all about consciousness. And we have been looking at it from a lot of different perspectives this month, and figuring out if we're in it or it's in us. Can we expand it? Can we grow it? What is this stuff called consciousness? Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, tells us in the definitions in the Science of Mind that it's mental awareness. Those are the first two words that he uses in the definition of consciousness. Now, he goes on about a half a page, but those first two words, I think, are really relative for us in that it's that mental awareness. And when we begin to look at other sources, this is that say awareness or perception of something, or awareness of the mind of itself in the world, And it's something that we all share, isn't it? It's almost like life itself, this thing called consciousness. What exactly is it? And a lot of different disciplines in the world study consciousness. The medical profession. And if you're in a coma, they're always curious. Is there consciousness? Is there still awareness? We see it theologically. We're studying it spiritually ourselves. We see it cosmically, philosophically. So a lot of different perspectives and angles and views that we can look at this thing called consciousness. So we started off our first week with, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? And we said that what we focus on expands. And we've done a lot of work over the past year in testing that principle and using that principle in our life. And this started with our Pam Grout work in our study group about a year ago, where we were actually doing some experiments outside of our class to see if we could prove that principle, and we did many times. And we've continued to look at it. And then we said the first week we started our 30-day mental challenge. How many of you started that with me? A couple? Yeah? Are you having some results? Yeah, it's been 3 weeks. Starting to see anything shift? This is based on, for those that aren't doing it, it's based on William James' work, where he suggested that we direct our attention to what is good and useful and ignore the rest. And this is in alignment with that Science of Mind principle that says turn away from the condition and focus our energy, focus our activity on that which it is we want to see. Much like Thoreau's go confidently in the direction of our dreams, not looking back and complaining about what's there now, but looking forward and focusing on that which we want to see more of. So in trying this, our little handout that we had, our covenant, if you will, gave us the steps of it about looking back and looking at the current time and looking in the future and how to address issues. And that's on our website. If you'd like to download that and start it now, you can start 30 days any place that you would like. We just happened to start it on the 1st. So I'm seeing good results, and I think I'm going to keep doing it. I know this is only week 3 of it. We've got one more week, but I think I'm going to keep doing it because I'm seeing some pretty good results. It's a little faster when I redirect, and I'm not having to redirect as much. So I think that's good progress. Anybody else seeing progress? Yeah, a little bit, good. And then last week, Mother's Day, we celebrated the Divine Feminine in us all in honor of the Mother's Day holiday, and that was based on the premise that God is all there is. And we are that unity and that wholeness that is God in form, in expression. And then last week, we touched on that common idea in the New Thought world about we create our own reality. And we suggested that maybe it's not that we create our own reality, but we create our experience of reality. We create our experience of it through this thing called consciousness, through these filters that we have established within ourselves about how we look at life. And we had a few pointers last week, a few ideas. One was to become willing to let go of control and resistance. The other is to let go of what limits us, those old stories. Those old stories we continue to carry around with us year after year and keep telling them and making that the platform from which we live our life. Let those go. And then embodying new and empowering thoughts and actions, nourishing our souls. If we're looking for a relationship, read about successful relationships. If we're looking for career, read about people who have successful careers. If we're looking for better financial good and improvement in our life, read stories and do research about what people are doing that are achieving that. Set it up in yourself that is who and what you can be also, whatever it is that you might be working on in your life. And then tell the universe that you're worthy, ready, and receptive. And we use the example of setting the table when the guests are on their way. We set the table, we light the candles. We're ready and expectant. We are ready, worthy, and receptive. And today we're going to move into looking at authenticity. And authenticity as the bridge back to ourselves. I'll bridge back to ourselves. Now, authenticity is real, genuine, true, accurate. Would you agree? Authenticity, real, true, genuine. Yeah? Okay. And we hear that we need to be more authentic, don't we? We need to be more authentic. We need to react in an authentic way. We need to show up authentically. We need to learn to be more authentic, to live an authentic life. And in fact, in our study group, we just finished the Brene Brown work, The Gifts of Imperfection, where she talks a great deal about vulnerability and authenticity and how vulnerability can be a tool in becoming more authentic in our life. And we talk about it as something that we can get authentic, as something that we can learn. But in fact, there's no master's degree program out there on authenticity. The true fact is we are authentic. We are unique. We are genuine article. We already are that. It's not something that we become. We already are that. We already all have our PhDs, don't we? In being our authentic self. But what has happened? We have this chasm of beliefs that we've created over our lifetime, of ways that we then begin to hide. We begin to fear. Because when we were authentic about something with someone at some point, perhaps we felt judged. Perhaps we felt made wrong. Perhaps we felt fear. And what do? Our ego, bless its little heart, says, oh, that didn't feel good. We're not going to let that happen again. Up goes a wall. In goes this chasm of belief, right? And it just keeps getting wider and wider the fuller it gets. So it's not that it's an authenticity problem. It's the problem of the things that we have created in our life to be inauthentic, to protect us from those things and places and ideas and thoughts that have hurt us over time. Now, it could start when we're this big, and it continues as late as this morning, right? Something could have happened on our way here that causes us to retract and pull back again. Ooh, that didn't work. I'm not going to do that again. Anybody ever felt that way? Yeah, sure. Sure. And how can we begin to return to authenticity in ourselves in a world that thrives in this inauthenticity? I'm not even sure that's a word, but we're going to use it. But our world kind of thrives in that. Those that work in an office or have ever worked in an office, isn't there this little office politics that just kind of is how things are, right? Yeah, there's that. And we kind of have to fit in our little cube. And then there's the 24/7 news. Remember when that started? Was it CNN that started 24/7 news? It was like, wow, I can find out what's happening anytime, 24 hours a day. Cool. Well, now what's happened? They got to fill 24/7 time slots. And if there's not something happening, what do? They make it up. Or they bring in experts to tell you the same story in a different way 82 times, right? Sure. We see that all the time. And then it has to change because what they said wasn't quite really what happened. I have a friend that's a minister back in my hometown in Virginia, and he just posted a little vent on Facebook about how he used to love ESPN, and when it became 24/7, he was so excited because he's a big sports fan. And he said, it's now, I don't even listen to it because there's nothing valuable there any longer. There's nothing valuable there any longer. And then we look at corporations that do their own fan page. You know, it's not like us saying, wow, I really love this product. It's them saying, I love this product, I make this product, and trying to lead us to believe through testimonials that it's people that are saying that, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's the corporation saying it. And then do we even do this maybe in our own friendships and relationships sometimes? Where we say what we think they want us to say because we think if we say what really we think, that dress really does make your butt look big, that they're not going to like us anymore? Sure. And then, there's the question of, is that inauthentic or just flat unkind? Right? Yeah. So, and I know and I recognize that in a spiritual community, and you guys, your consciousness is so high, you're authentic, right? And we have these wonderful meetings and classes, and we have deep sharing in those classes. And we're very authentic with each other. And I'm going to suggest that that's because we do these things called centering, meditations, prayers, where we begin to remember the connection that we all are. And it's much easier to be our authentic and natural self in those environments. So I want to put that out there, that I'm not saying that we're all inauthentic all the time. I don't believe that. And yet I do know that we have places and events and situations where we go into it, don't we? We go into it. We put on our mask. Yes? We hide behind our mask. We put on our protection. We put on our armor. I love props. That's fun. And so we have, if we can't learn it, if it's not something that we can learn, we can't learn this thing called authenticity. What do? It's been so popularized in our society to talk about authenticity. We hear it everywhere, that it's become a thing instead of a way of being. And I found a quote that really helped me shift that into perspective. It's from author Jordan Harbinger, and he says, teaching someone how to be authentic is like teaching someone to be taller. I'm going to learn to be taller. If I could learn to be taller, I'd probably take another 2 inches, maybe 3, yeah? So that shifts it, doesn't it? I'm going to learn to be authentic. I'm going to learn to be taller. Yeah. So we already have it. We can't learn it. But what can you do if you don't feel it? Do you ever feel inauthentic? You ever feel like a fake? You ever feel like you're just going through the motions? You're not really connected? So what can we do? We have to stop being inauthentic. We have to let go. It's not that we need to become more authentic. We need to let go of the stuff that's in the chasm that we've built to protect ourselves, the moat around ourselves, so to speak, of protection mechanisms that we've created. We need to start letting that go and letting that fall away. To release the things that we do, say, or be that are inauthentic. And remembering, what we don't pay attention to has a tendency to fade away. What we don't feed perishes. So we start letting that go. All right, and we're now going, what, who, me? No way, not me. Well, let's look at some ways that we might do that. Maybe once or twice this may have happened in your life, okay? Or someone you know, even better, someone you know. Masquerading. The masks again. Masquerading as someone you're not. Don't we do that every day in our offices and our businesses? Have you ever seen the CEO out of the office and at a social event? Sometimes they're the same. Sometimes they're not. It's always an interesting thing to observe. So are we masquerading? Are we wearing a mask and playing a role in life, being an actor in our own life? Or are we being our true and authentic self and showing up? Now, there's that authentic piece of us that's in everything we do, and then there are the roles that we play. If I'm a police officer, I have to put on a uniform, and I have a role to play to protect and serve. It's what I have to do, and yet I've got my authentic self in there on how I'm going to approach and address things. One of the interesting stories, my dad's been good material for us here a few Sundays, and what came up today was when I did not know him before this, obviously, but my mother told the story that when he came back from World War II service and being overseas, that he had embodied the role of military Army drill sergeant. And he brought that back into his life and family, and that's the man that I knew growing up. That was the way he acted until very late in his life, where we began to see a softening in him, and he began to, I think, revert back to some of his perhaps more natural, authentic personality. But he brought that back with him. It was a role that he had played and embodied, and it became part of his persona. And it was a protection mechanism, because as long as he was big and gruff and boisterous in the military, he was safe, right? So he brought that home, and he was safe in the hometown and the family and the work environment by being that gruffness. Yeah, I see some nods there. Compromising. Compromising what you feel is right. Don't rock the boat. Don't prolong the meeting. My ideas aren't valuable. Compromising rather than working in that win-win environment. Rather than taking the time to work on win-win, we just compromise and whatever. Whatever. You ever do that? You ever heard somebody do that? Imitating those around you. Emerson tells us that envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. We are to be our own divine spark of light, of love, of joy, individualized and unique, not imitating someone else. Not imitating someone else. And then if we're feeling feelings of fraudulence, deception, self-consciousness, we might be having some of those inauthentic moments. Any of that sound familiar? Maybe? So it's not that we're learning how to be authentic, but that we're unlearning how to be inauthentic. How about that? Is that double negative? Unlearning how to be inauthentic. We're bridging the chasm. We're taking the beliefs out of there. We're getting rid of those and getting ourselves back to our natural state. Our natural state. Anybody ever gotten so messed up on a diet that they just are all out of whack, and then you've got to get back to your natural state? You do this detox, you do all that stuff, and it's like, ooh, I just need to eat natural and be normal. Like after the holidays. You know, when you go through the holidays and you eat all that crazy gooey stuff in the holidays, and then in January it's like, I want beans and rice. That's all I want, it's beans and rice. So how do we stop? How do we stop? Well, it's like changing any habit. We talk about this all the time. How do we stop anything? We notice it when it comes up. We just have to be aware. It's that consciousness thing again. We have to notice it and become aware. The moment you catch yourself being inauthentic, we've set our intention. I'm going to catch myself and when I'm being inauthentic. So what is that typically going to be? It's going to be a feeling, isn't it? It's going to be a feeling where we feel that defensiveness come up, or we feel fear maybe come up, or we feel anger, some emotion that comes up that's going to be our clue. It's going to be our trigger to pay attention. Something's going on here. Am I about to be inauthentic? Or you hear yourself agreeing with someone and you hear that small voice in your head going, that's not what you believe. What are you doing? Well, I want to have some long, protracted conversation with them. Ever been there? Yeah. So we have to notice it first. We have to notice it first. Next, then we need to ask, what am I protecting? What am I protecting? Do I fear for my physical or emotional safety? What is it most of the time? Emotional, right? It's our emotional safety. That's where we've gotten our heart broken. Our ego's been attacked. Our ideas have been shot down. That's usually what we feel like is going to be attacked. That's what's not safe. I'm going to be embarrassed. I was embarrassed the last time. I'm not going to let that happen again. And then what is a more powerful and authentic response? What is a more powerful and authentic response? If someone starts to say something that you feel your resistance come up and you're ready to defend or argue or shut down on, ask yourself, is this a place for me to be vulnerable? Is this a place for me to say, I'm sorry, I'm feeling a little defensive here, And rather than go into that, could we talk about this? Can you help me understand this in a different way that I don't feel defensive about it, that I'm not going to feel defensive? And they may say, well, why are you feeling defensive? Well, I'm not sure. Let's go through it again. Have that conversation, communication about it. That's the most powerful thing that we can do, because if we want a different result, we have to have a different action, don't we? We can't keep doing the same thing we've always done and see a different result. It just doesn't work that way. Just doesn't work that way. If we could ask ourselves that better way to respond in those moments. Viktor Frankl, we've used his quote before, between stimulus and response there's a space, a nanomicrosecond space, and in that space is our power to choose. Our power to choose our response, and in that response lies our growth and freedom. And that's that idea of choosing something different to see the change we want to see in our life. Choosing something different. So building our bridge back to authenticity is really a game of subtraction, isn't it? We're not adding anything. We're subtracting. We're taking away those beliefs and mechanisms that we've put into place over the years to protect ourselves from the opinions, the fine opinions and good intentions of others who have actually been painful. Who've actually been painful. We don't have to add anything. We are 1,000% authentic right now, right where we sit, exactly as we are. We are the real deal. We are expressions of the Most High. We are God in form. And we're whole, perfect, and complete just like we are. I got about 10 more cliches I can throw out here. But it's true, we are. We are. And when we start putting up these defense mechanisms, boy, do we forget that. Boy, do we forget that. I do want to put out a brief word of caution here about this idea of being authentic, because there can be an attitude in there of, this is me, take it or leave it. Like it or not, take it or leave it. You ever met anybody like that? That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, that's not what I'm talking about. You're from the South, you know. But what we're talking about is this idea of wholeness. And in the whole, there are multiple points, but the multiple points are still in the one. When we have 10 multiple points out here, they're all individual and doing their own thing and not working together, things can get a little sideways. So we're talking about connection. We're talking about kindness. We're talking about compassion. We're talking about recognizing the wholeness amongst ourselves. And that's that idea of conversation. Help me understand. Because I know you are also a divine revelation of Spirit and of God speaking to me. Help me understand what you're saying. I'm not in resistance. I let that go. We talked about that last week. Help me understand. Help me understand. So the courage to release this inauthentic behavior, to put down our armor. Another way to say that. Put down our armor. Scary, isn't it? Vulnerable. I could get hurt again. It's true. That's a possibility. So I've got some suggestions for us on ways that we can maybe look at this different. Some tools we can implement. My pearls of wisdom for the week. We've got 4 of them this week. Are they going to zoom in again, Joe?
Yes,
they are. All right. So we'll have them all 4 up here in just a moment. The first one is to be still and get in touch with who you really are. Does anybody have any white space in your calendar? Now what that means is you're just book solid, right? There's no white space in your calendar. We've got a crazy lifestyle, many of us. We're very busy. We have a lot of activities. There's a lot of things we can participate in, we get to do. Our lives are full and rich. And in that, sometimes we can get a little crazy and lose touch, perhaps, with this true self, with this core of who and what we are. So I get to tell you every week, and today's no different, meditation is important. It counts. It's important time for you to be with yourself, to be in that stillness, to know who you really are. To know who you really are. And then share yourself with people you trust. People you trust. We've all made that mistake, haven't we? We've shared our heart, our ideas, our thoughts, our fears, with someone perhaps that wasn't trustworthy. And that hurt us. That hurt us in some way. So if you do not have people in your life right now that you feel that you can share your true, authentic self with, I would invite you to make an appointment with one of our practitioners of religious science. They are trained professionals who will listen to you. They will hear you. And they hold as sacred confidence whatever you tell them. Sacred confidence. And they are here for you and here for this community and available to you. We also have professional therapists that will do the same. And many of you, I'm sure, have other friends and relatives that you can talk to as well. But if you don't, it's important to, it's like the training wheels we talked about last week, or I guess in our class about the training wheels of tithing. And that's what this could be, is, you start talking to a practitioner and you build that idea of that muscle and you begin to let go of the barriers that we've established. And then the third is starting right now. Do something real. Do something real today. Think about it. What could you do? Well, how could you practice right now? Is there some little thing in your life that you're agreeing with that you really don't agree with? It could be as simple as a conversation with someone. Maybe somebody loves a TV show, Lost. Oh, that's great. I don't know anything about it. I've never watched it. Tell me why you love that show. Rather than saying, no, I hate that show. I'm going to be authentic and tell you I hate that show and don't talk to me ever again about it. That's that other thing, right? And we don't want to be that part. But, maybe understand. I don't watch the show. I'm not familiar with it. Tell me why you love it. Tell me why you love it. What about it makes you love it? There's a conversation. There's connection, right? There's connection. It's funny. Maybe some other areas that are a little more painful. I don't like being a mom all the time. I don't like being a nurse all the time. There's parts about it that I really dislike. There could be deeper things like that we really share from that authentic place. If you're a wonderful housekeeper and, you really hate it and you admit that. I really hate housework. I'm not going to do it. My mom was a perfect example of that. After my dad died, I came home for a visit, and as we were getting ready to go to bed, she goes, well, I hope the dust bunnies don't chase you down the hall. I'm like, okay. And she said, I never liked housework, but now that your father's not here, I don't have to do it anymore. Yeah. So for 60 years, she lived that inauthentic part of her. Every Saturday morning, clean that house. Where are we doing that? Where are we doing that? So the nice thing about being authentic with another person is that it gives them permission to be authentic with you, doesn't it? Because now you've established trust. When you trust them with your heart, when you trust them with your truth, then they can open up to you and trust you too, because they know you're trustworthy. And then what happens? That's an acting consciousness. And then that begins to ripple out and affect the consciousness of the entire planet. And that's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to do. So I want to wrap up this week with our practice, this week's practice. And I invite you to learn to care more about what you think, about who you really are, than what anyone else thinks about who you really are. Care more about who you really are than what anyone else wants you to be. We've all experienced that. Maybe parents, maybe teachers, maybe ministers, maybe friends, maybe employers. that want us to be something that just doesn't quite fit. It's like a pair of shoes that are too small. Doesn't quite fit. Doesn't quite fit. Ernest Holmes tells us practically the whole human race is hypnotized because it thinks what somebody else told it to think. So it's not caring less about what other people think, it's caring more about what you think. We do care about what other people think. We care about what each other thinks. I mean, that's what makes us all part of this human dance. But it's really, we need to care more about what we think. Care more about us. I had a very wise mentor invite me to reflect on some questions several years ago. And they were powerful in my life at that time because they were deep reflection type questions. And I want to share those with you today and invite you to take those into your practice this week. So the first one is, what would I love? What would I love? And that's not like, oh, I'd love a chocolate nut sundae. It's deeper than that. What would I love? And I'm reminded of Mary Morrissey's Prosperity Plus question where she says, I'm so happy and grateful now that. And fill in the blank. I'm so happy and grateful now that whatever it is in my life. My book is published. My children are grown. My daughter is a physician. You know, whatever it might be. I'm so happy and grateful now that. So what would I love in my life? Second question, what makes my soul feel fulfilled? Now that's a soul question that you've got to ask in meditation. What makes my soul feel fulfilled? The third one, when am I satisfied with myself? Anybody have an inner critic in their heads? I'm the only one? Really? Okay, this is for me. When am I satisfied with myself? That inner critic is silent. The inner critic is silent, and where there's a sense of all is well. And then finally, what brings me joy? What brings me joy? And I'm not talking about happiness. I'm talking that deep, abiding joy that just bubbles up no matter what else is going on in the hurricane storm around us and the winds and the rain and everything else. Joy. In that eye of the storm. What brings me joy? So I invite you to take these into your contemplation, your meditation, your journaling this week, and reflect on them. You know, maybe one at a time, but reflect on these. And I promise you that if you take the time to honestly and deeply reflect and answer these questions, that you will find answers to living a more profound life. You will know more about who you are as this individualized expression of God. And when those buffeting winds come up in the form of others' opinions, you'll be more anchored and grounded in who you are and remembering that truth. So I want to leave us today with a quote by Oscar Wilde, who says, "Be yourself, everyone else is taken." So let's anchor this in prayer. Please join me as we do our affirmative prayer today. So how very good it is to recognize that there is only one power, one presence, one life. There's only one mind, and there's only one source of all that is, was, and will ever be, and that is God itself. It is that power and magnificence of the universe that has created all universes, the one we're in and all the ones we don't even know about. It's every grain of sand on our planet, and it's every breath that we take. For it is all, in all, as all. And all of it is here now present in this room, in the very air that we feel upon our skin. It is in the breath that we take. It is in the heartbeat that we feel in our chests. For we are in it, and it is in us. We are united in that absolute wholeness and that unity and that oneness. Not only of Source, but of each of us. Uniquely made manifest as a magnificent expression of light, brightly shining, brightly shining. So I speak my word for and about each one of us this day, knowing, claiming, and accepting the absolute, authentic perfection of who and what we are as these beings of light, as this brightness, as this joy. And I know for those that could not be with us today that they're in their perfect right places. I know for anyone that's got anything on their heart that they're working with, that prayer is lifted here now and made manifest and whole in their life. That the healing is revealed through them. That the joy returns. And that the bright light shines even brighter. And how grateful I am for this knowing. How grateful I am for the truth and the manifestation of this prayer. As I release this into the action of law, knowing that it's done, accepting that it's so, we just simply affirm it together by saying, and so it is.